Okay, you guys basically begged me to make this video, so here is the story of the Douglas DC tank. Enjoy! Originally, I was gonna include the DC-3 in this video and in the shorts version, but as I was writing the script for this video, I quickly realized the DC-3 story is so legendary and I can make such a funny video out of it that I'm gonna save it for its own separate video. And since the DC-4 and the DC-6 follow the DC-3 quite closely, I'm just gonna briefly talk about these three planes. In 1935, the DC-3 took to the skies. Then in 1942, the DC-4 took off, and lastly, the DC-6 in 1946. The last DC-3 or C-47 was built in 1946. The last DC-4 or C-54 Skymaster was built in 1947, and the last DC-6 in 1958. This means, as of 2026, the youngest DC-3 is 80 years old, the youngest DC-4 is 79 years old, and the youngest DC-6 is 68 years old. And guess what? Especially the DC-3, a handful of all three legends continue to fly in 2026, but there is no definitive data on exactly how many of them still fly. But from what I've gathered, probably about 150 DC-3s, 5 DC-4s, and 20 DC-6s remain in service, literally outliving every man that designed it and even the company itself. And interestingly, the DC-6 outlived the DC-7. Truly a remarkable feat of engineering by these three legends. Can you see the runway? No, I can't. You landed our beautiful DC-8 in the ocean! Well, at least no one is injured, but the plane is a write-off. Salt water destroys metal like how Ryanair destroys runways. No, it says they repaired and returned it to service! This is a rather wild incident. On the 22nd of November 1968, Japan Airlines Flight 2, a 6-month-old Douglas DC-8 was attempting to land at San Francisco Airport. But visibility was extremely low, about 1.2 kilometers due to fog. So as the pilots were landing, they couldn't see the runway, and they ended up pulling off a solid 41 years early, accidentally ditching the plane into the San Francisco Bay about 2.5 miles, 4 kilometers, or 2.15 nautical miles short of the runway. Amazingly, despite the accidental ditching, no one was injured on the plane, and all 107 people got out of the plane perfectly fine. And if that wasn't crazy enough, salt water causes metal to rust significantly faster than fresh water. Not only that, if salt water touches whatever electronic stuff, you will never hear the end of it. Yet, I don't know how, they decided to fix the plane and it continued to fly for another 20 years. Man, I need to speak to the engineers at Douglas and Japan Airlines. Hey pilot. Hello. Remember how the 707 once landed with part of its wing missing? Yep. The whole right wing is gone! Heck yeah, it is! Why are you celebrating? Okay, when the 707 landed with part of its wing gone, that was insane. But this is the whole wing! And what do you mean you were fixed and even got another kill? This is another rather insane incident. On the 1st of May 1983, an F-15 collided with an A-4 Skyhawk, causing the entire right wing of the F-15 to break off. The pilots of the A-4 ejected, but the pilots of the F-15 originally couldn't tell the extent of the damage. Instead of ejecting, they used the afterburners and actually managed to regain control of the aircraft. They then managed to somehow land the plane on the runway at twice the landing speed, stopping with 6 meters of runway to spare. And yes, 18 years earlier, Pan Am A-43 landed with part of its wing missing. But since part of the wing was still there, it definitely helped them to stabilize the plane a bit more. But in this case, the entire wing was gone. How on earth the plane didn't crash is beyond me. And according to the pilots, when McDonald Douglas analyzed the incident, they found that only the F-15 had a very wide lifting body, which I guess is just the area underneath the aircraft. You just need to fly it fast enough and it'll stay airborne. You don't need wings. This plane has some issues, so please treat it with respect. Go. You're upside down nose diving. It's a DC-10, not an F-15. We said to treat it with care. And here's the last incident from the short, and one of the more infamous ones. On the 7th of April 1994, a FedEx DC-10, the aircraft took off from Tennessee bound for California, but it would never make it there. A man by the name of Auburn Calloway had been facing some issues in life. Once a captain, now demoted to a flight engineer. A marriage with kids that ended in divorce, and he soon may lose his job altogether. But he still loved his ex-wife and his family, and his life insurance, should he die in a work-related accident, was worth $2 million. Hence, on the fateful day, he put his plan to action. Using hammers, he attacked the 3 pilots in an attempt to crash the plane. He didn't use guns or bombs as they could leave traces, but hammers were innocent, and the injuries caused by hammers would be quite hard to tell apart from the injuries caused by the crash itself, and he almost succeeded. But the 3 crew members, mustering their strength, managed to fight back and pin him down, and one of the primary weapons they used was the aircraft itself. Pitching it up high, pushing it down, rolling it left and right, truly pushing the aircraft beyond its limits. And in the end, the plane landed much heavier than the legal safe limit for a DC-10. Calloway was arrested and now faces life imprisonment. The 3 pilots were awarded, but sadly, due to their injuries, they never returned to flying. The crew and the aircraft did amazing, and the aircraft was repaired and returned to service, and today in 2026, it's currently stored. I literally saw a comment that said, imagine what the investigators thought when they opened up the plane's flight recorders and saw what this plane did. I can only imagine that. Yeah, there's gonna be a lot of DC-10s in this video. Or should I say, DC tanks. This is another very infamous incident. On the 19th of July 1989, United Airlines 232 was bound for Pennsylvania when an incident occurred. It's worth knowing airplane manufacturers don't make the engines, but 17 years earlier in 1972, when the plane received its engines from General Electric, the number 2 engine mounted on the tail had a defect. An engine's fan disc is supposed to be one solid piece of metal to ensure it's strong, but during the forging process, an air bubble had formed. This meant that in the disc, almost impossible to see by the naked eye or by machines, there was a hole where metal was missing, and hence it weakened the disc. Then over the course of 17 years, small cracks started to form around that hole and grew with time, until finally, on United 232, the cracks grew big enough to rupture the whole disc and destroy the engine. And by a stroke of bad luck, the debris from the fan disc punctured all 3 hydraulic lines in the vertical stabilizer, causing a total loss of all hydraulics. Hydraulics control the aircraft's movement. It's like the rod that connects your steering wheel to the wheel. No hydraulics means there's no way to control the plane, like how if the rod snaps, you cannot steer your car using the steering wheel anymore. So the plane was uncontrollable, hence the pilot started to use engine thrust to steer the plane. And luckily for them, a man named Denny Fitch, who was a DC-10 flight instructor, was on board. And in the simulator, he had practiced trying to land a DC-10 with no hydraulics after learning about the crash of Japan Airlines 123 4 years earlier. He was unfortunately never successful in landing the plane, but that didn't matter. This was the real deal now. With all 4 pilots helping, they managed to divert the plane to Sioux City to attempt an emergency landing, but sadly, the plane crash landed onto the ground. Investigators concluded that the crash was unsurvivable and a proper safe landing was impossible. Hence, with the crash landing, 111 people lost their lives, with 1 more following 30 days later. But amazingly, 184 people survived, majority of the people, including all 4 pilots. It's obvious that the skills and the airmanship of all 4 pilots, the rescuers around, the weather, and the solid construction of the DC-10 contributed to the large number of survivors. This is one of my favorite incidents to keep revisiting. I guess it's the emotions and the situation that the pilots were in that makes me want to keep revisiting it. Let's take a break from the DC-10, but trust me, he'll be back later, and take a look at her sibling, the DC-9. On the 2nd of June 1983, Air Canada Flight 797 was heading towards Toronto when halfway through the flight, smoke started to come out of one of the toilets on the airplane, but there was no sign of fire. The crew sprayed the entire toilet with fire retardant and locked the doors, then diverted to Kentucky. But the smoke didn't let up and it filled the whole plane up, and the door to the toilet became hot, though there was still no visible fire anywhere. About 29 minutes from the very first signs of fire, with the plane completely filled with smoke, the pilots managed to make an incredibly difficult, hard landing, causing 4 out of 6 tires to burst. The plane came to a stop and emergency evacuations proceeded. Sadly though, just 90 seconds after touchdown, the entire cabin was engulfed by a flashover, which is when fire races from one end to the other end of the aircraft. This resulted in 23 of the 46 people dying in the flames, and it was this incident, along with British Airways Flight 28 2 years later, that highlighted the need for better evacuation procedures. The cause of the fire was never determined, because this type of stuff is very difficult to track. After both Air Canada 797 and British Airways Flight 28, the evacuation procedures for aircraft were significantly improved, and the pilots that day did an incredible job landing the plane, and the plane itself also held together just enough for everything to take place. Alright, we're back to the DC-10, and this is one of the more controversial incidents. On the 12th of June 1972, American Airlines Flight 96 took off from LAX carrying 67 people when the cargo door blew open mid-flight. This caused the pressure to release from the cargo door, causing the cabin floor to collapse, damaging the aircraft's flight controls. Somehow though, the plane held together just enough, mostly because of how little people there were on board, and the pilots had just enough skills to be able to land the plane. It turns out there was a design flaw with the cargo door. Even if the door wasn't properly latched, closed and locked, the warnings in the cockpit would still turn off, and it's possible to push the locks of the door all the way down, even if the door isn't properly secured. This meant that the door, even if it wasn't properly latched, it could look like it was from both the outside of the aircraft and the inside of the cockpit, where the warnings would not show anything, and the issue still wasn't properly fixed by 1974, but this time, we weren't so lucky. On the 3rd of March 1974, Turkish Airlines Flight 981 was bound for London when once again, mid-flight, the cargo door blew open due to it not being latched properly, and because of how many people were on the aircraft, 346 people, it caused even more damage than the American Airlines incident. Hence, the plane crashed into the ground, killing everyone on board. And at the time, it was the deadliest plane crash in history, killing almost double the previous worst crash, the Kano air disaster. And hence, it was this incident that put McDonnell Douglas and the DC-10 in a bad light for many years. But the reason why I'm including this incident here is because credit where credit is due. In the American Airlines incident, the DC-10 did hold together enough and the pilots were able to land the plane. I'm doing these three incidents together because if you haven't noticed, for the last few incidents, they've all followed the same trend. On the 6th of July 1996, a Delta Airlines MD-88, which is basically just a more modern DC-9, had an engine explode in flight. And looking at the pictures, it was a rather horrible explosion. Debris penetrated the fuselage, killing 2 people while injuring 7. Still, the plane didn't crash and the crew saved the plane. On the 27th of December 1991, Scandinavian Airlines Flight 751 ingested ice into its engines while climbing out of Sweden, causing both engines to fail. The pilots managed to glide the plane and crash landed. Somehow, no fire broke out, and even though the plane broke into 3 pieces, everyone survived. And lastly, on the 19th of October 2021, an MD-87 was taking off from Houston when it overshot the runway after its elevators became jammed. The resulting crash destroyed the plane, but none of the 23 people on board were killed, while only 3 people sustained injuries. All these incidents really showcase the solid construction of the DC-9. Yeah, we're back to the DC-10. On the 1st of March 1978, Continental 603 was taking off from LAX when one of its tires came off. This resulted in the tire on the other side of the axle being overloaded, and hence it also burst, and the debris ended up damaging more tires in the process. The plane couldn't stop and overran the runway. Unfortunately, 4 people were killed in this incident, but majority of the people managed to survive. And lastly, similar to Delta Airlines 1288 I mentioned earlier, on the 3rd of November 1973, National Airlines Flight 27 encountered an engine explosion, and the debris damaged the window, leading to an explosive decompression, killing 1 passenger and injuring 24. Despite that, the plane still managed to land. Again, both of these incidents, even though 1 death is still too many, it's still impressive how the DC-10 held together in both of these. Here's another 2 incidents that I'm not going to talk about, but I feel that they deserve an honorable mention. Alaska 261 and Southern Air 242. But wait, why end this video on such a sad note? Why not we move on to something happier? Here is an amazing fact about the DC-8. On the 21st of August 1961, the DC-8 set a record for being the first civilian plane to break the sound barrier. This was a test flight to collect data for a new wing design, and in a controlled dive, the DC-8 reached speeds of Mach 1.012 or 1,075 kilometers an hour, 668 miles per hour, or 518 knots. Yes, the DC-10 is back, but it's on a happy note this time. Since 2006, a few DC-10s were converted from passenger planes into tankers and used for aerial firefighting. And as of 2026, 4 of them remain active, and they proved to be crucial to fighting off wildfires, saving many innocent lives. And I'm sure that many people don't even know that these planes and their pilots are actually saving their lives. Flying into thick, choking smoke at low altitudes and flying these beasts in ways they weren't meant to be flown. These pilots and the plane itself is just insane. To the firefighters and the DC-10s out there, thank you for your service.